Welcome to the Academy Awards! It's that wonderful, amazing time of the year when we all get to spend 5 hours watching rich, out-of-touch psychopaths congratulate each other about how cool they all are. This year, the Academy was bribed enough by 10 studios to nominate 10 films they didn't watch for Best Picture. And since the Academy voters don't actually watch any of the movies that they're voting on, I decided that I'll do it. Every year, I watch and rank every Best Picture nominee from worst to best. I have a playlist of the previous year's Oscar videos in the description if you want to check them out. Let me know what you guys think about these movies in the comments below. Also, I will be live tweeting during the Oscars if you want to follow me on Twitter and observe my descent into madness in real time. But without any further ado, let's see how the movies were this year. Were they any good? Let's find out. Number 10, Don't Look Up. Don't Look Up starts off okay, but this movie very quickly devolves into one of the most generic, boring, and pretentious Oscar bait movies I have ever seen. The cinematography is bland and uninteresting, the music is cheesy and over the top, and this movie essentially just relies on one thing to carry the whole movie. Basically, it's the most obvious metaphor in the world. An asteroid is coming to hit Earth, and all the scientists are saying, hey, people who run the Earth, we should do something to stop this asteroid. And they're all basically ignoring the scientists. It's one massive climate change allegory, and I think that a film could be a great way to raise awareness about climate change, as long as you don't use that message as a crutch to absolve yourself of any other criticism. Because every single other aspect of filmmaking in this movie is absolutely embarrassing. Nothing about this movie is good. I'm not exaggerating. And the one thing you probably think about this movie is good, if you haven't seen it yet, are the actors. Because this movie is full of A-list talent from some of the best and most famous actors in the world. You got Jonah Hill, you got Meryl Streep, you got Katniss Everdeen, I forget her name, you got Leonardo DiCaprio, and you're like, okay, these are great actors. What's the problem? The problem is the director can't direct actors for shit, and it's so obvious in this movie. So many of these world-class actors are giving such average and embarrassing performances for their stature. These are some of the best actors in the world, and they're just embarrassing themselves, and the worst instance of this is Leonardo DiCaprio. Leonardo DiCaprio is one of the best actors alive. He has given some of the best performances I have ever seen. You got movies like The Wolf of Wall Street, Shutter Island, The Revenant, where he gives performances where he's the only actor in the world who could have done that performance. Especially The Revenant. It is the best performance he's given in his career. It is one of the best acting performances ever. And despite the fact when that movie came out, he was easily the most famous actor in the world, he disappeared and you didn't even see Leonardo DiCaprio in it. And that is the highest praise an actor can get. And here, anyone could have done this performance. This is such a goofy, so beneath him performance that I'm shocked he accepted it. I mean, Adam Sandler could have done this performance. This is like an Adam Sandler comedy film performance, and Leonardo DiCaprio's doing it in a Best Picture nominated drama. And speaking of Oscar bait, Meryl Streep plays the president. In this movie, Meryl Streep plays the president! Do I need to elaborate? It's like I made this movie to make fun of other Oscar-nominated movies. But this movie isn't satire. That's the hilarious and embarrassing thing about this, is that it takes itself 100% seriously. I get the impression that no one who worked on this movie gave an iota of a shit, and they only did this because they either thought it would get them an Oscar or doing it would make them a good person. And this movie also does the one thing that every painfully cringy Oscar bait movie does, and I cannot fucking stand it. It is when it is about one political topic, but they can't fucking help themselves from commenting on every political topic they could possibly squish into the script where it just feels messy and unnecessary. They comment on every possible political subject you've thought about in the last 2 years when this movie is only about climate change? What's the point in distracting from the core message with all these other forced messages when you could have just stuck with one thing and made that one message hit the audience really hard? I think that would have made the movie much better. The most infuriating thing about this movie is that it has the absolute nerve to mock other movies for being vapid, surface level, and stupid, when this movie is in fact vapid, surface level, and stupid. It is so pretentious and lacks any self-awareness at all. What dark money is going on in Hollywood where Adam McKay keeps getting nominated for Oscars? You know, I was thinking about this a lot. Is this movie worse than Promising Young Woman? Because I ripped that movie apart last year. I'm giving this movie the same score I gave Promising Young Woman, and you know what? I gotta be honest, I think this movie's worse. At least Promising Young Woman has the generosity to be less than 2 hours. Don't Look Up is 2.5 hours. This movie is 2.5 hours long. I can't stand it. I hate this movie. 3 out of 10. Get it out of my face. Number 9. The Power of the Dog. The music was good. The cinematography was good. The costume design and set design was actually pretty great. My problems with the movie are this. There is essentially nothing that composes a story. There is no inciting incident. There is no rising tension. There is no climax. It is just a series of scenes that seemingly have no thematic through line and only exist to make the movie as long and boring as possible. I don't think there was a theme in this movie, because when you watch it, you really just kind of see Jesse Plemons stutter. You see some cowboys walking around and they'll say some mean, bullying comment to each other. Sometimes characters will just play musical instruments, and there's nothing that stitches scenes together in a way that is comprehensive. It doesn't feel like I watched the movie. It feels like the whole movie is one massive first act where all they're doing is just setting up characters and plot points, and then it just never resolves any of them or does anything interesting with anything that's going on. I found absolutely none of the characters interesting. They all essentially had one personality trait, and aside from one of them, don't have any kind of an arc that leads me to believe that that was a well-written character. And the acting, I don't want to say it was bad, but what the fuck did any of these actors do to warrant all 4 of them getting Oscar nominations? They all essentially gave one emotion throughout the whole film. What makes this Jesse Plemons performance different from any other Jesse Plemons performance? He does the same thing in every movie. It doesn't matter the director, it doesn't matter the story. He does this in every movie he's in, and it can work. Breaking Bad's my favorite TV show. I'm thinking of ending things as one of my favorite movies, but it does not work in this movie. He feels like he doesn't exist. Also, Benedict Cumberbatch, yeah, he's goofy as hell in the movie. He's just angry and a Disney Channel original bully the whole time. It is really, really fucking lame. And Kirsten Dunst, I mean, she existed? She didn't do anything particularly interesting. I don't get why they're all nominated for Oscars. Considering the fact that this movie essentially has nothing interesting in it to me, I was so bored out of my mind the entire time. This movie is in competition for the most boring movie I've ever seen. It felt entirely pointless, and I'm gonna give The Power of the Dog a 3 out of 10. Number 8. Licorice Pizza. Licorice Pizza was the movie that I was most excited to watch this year. I heard great things about it, and the director, Paul Thomas Anderson's a very talented director. The 2 movies I've seen from him were both fantastic, which is why it's such a shame that I found this movie incredibly disappointing. The cinematography and the music and the editing were all pretty average. The movie wasn't one definitive story. It's more like these characters bob and weave between several small stories that don't really feel like they share any kind of thematic through line or have any consequences. It feels like this film picks up and drops off storylines so quickly that none of them really mattered in the grand scheme of things. things. What was the point of Gary being a child actor? What was the point of them having a waterbed business? What was the point of them going to Barbara Streisand's house? What was the point of Alana volunteering at a mayor's campaign? It feels like none of these things had some kind of resolution that meant anything. Maybe this went over my head or something, but I don't get the impression that this movie has a theme. What was the audience supposed to get out of this movie if there isn't a moral or a lesson? The two Paul Thomas Anderson films that I saw were There Will Be Blood and The Master. These films were amazing and had some of the best acting I've ever seen from acting legends like Daniel Day-Lewis, Philip Seymour Hoffman, Joaquin Phoenix, and Amy Adams. Comparing the acting in Licorice Pizza to the acting in those films, it just feels like a massive step down. This isn't to say that these actors are doing a bad job or anything, because they're definitely good here, but I just get the distinct impression that PTA didn't put as much effort into directing the actors in this film as he did in those other films. Okay, now I want to talk about something that I really don't like to, because it makes me incredibly uncomfortable. I've never been the kind of person who gets up on their soapbox and talks about how deeply offended they are by a film. Usually when I hear about movie controversies, I tend to think that they're being overdramatic, but I do feel like this film crossed an ethical line. In the film, it portrays a romance between two of the main characters, Alana being a 25-year-old adult and Gary being a 15-year-old child. The entire movie portrays their budding romance as cute or romantic. The movie ends with triumphant music as they run into each other's arms and kiss each other, implying that they're now in a relationship. And the movie seemingly portrays this as a positive thing. Myself, and it seems like a lot of other people online, get the impression that this movie is romanticizing pedophilia. When the director PTA was asked about the controversy, he said that he was just trying to portray the time period accurately. Let's say I interpret his words and meanings as charitably as possible. I wasn't alive in the 70s, so maybe this is something that just happened a lot back then. So if he was going to make a film about this time period, he should have gone out of his way to portray this romance as a bad thing. Aside from them getting into arguments sometimes, there's never really an indication in the entire film that this romance is unethical in any way. Them getting together in the end is portrayed as this victorious moment. And I'm willing to acknowledge that maybe I have a blind spot, maybe there's something I missed in the movie, I only saw it once, but I didn't notice anything that seemingly portrays this relationship as a bad thing. I just get this gross feeling that if the genders were reversed, a lot more people would be taking this controversy seriously. There's a scene in the film where Alana flashes Gary and it's supposed to be this cute, quirky moment. Imagine if the roles were reversed and the scene was a 25-year-old man flashing a 15-year-old girl. I just turned 24 this week. I'm 1 year younger than Alana is in this film. And personally, I find the concept of someone my age dating a 15-year-old to be absolutely evil. And the fact that Paul Thomas Anderson put it in the movie to be disgusting. I guess I could see why so many Hollywood celebrities liked it so much. 4 out of 10. Number 7. King Richard. King Richard follows the story of Richard Williams and how he raised his daughters to be tennis legends. Look, I have nothing to say about this movie. The movie's basically every Oscar bait drama movie about a real life person. I swear every single one of these movies are exactly the same. The acting, the cinematography, and the music are all very average. The movie's very cheesy, it's very Oscar baity, and wow, who could have predicted that the movie about tennis was going to be boring? What a surprise. 4 out of 10. Number 6. Drive My Car. Drive My Car is a Japanese film that follows the story of a man struggling with many personal and family demons. The acting, cinematography, and editing were all good. My favorite thing about the movie was the music, which was really good. The film started off showing drama between the main character and his family, and it was really engaging. The drama was intense, and the character writing here was so good. The problem is that after this, there's a time skip, and the time skip basically kills all the interest I had in the movie. All the great writing from the beginning basically stopped, and my interest in the film completely died. After the time skip, I just lost interest so quickly, and I became bored out of my mind. The time skip roughly occurs about a half hour into the movie, and this movie is 3 hours long. I watched 90 minutes into the movie and was just so bored that I turned it off. Look, I work 46 hours a week. I can't waste my time on a film that has no respect for it. This movie does absolutely nothing to justify its insane length. Maybe the second half of the movie is a masterpiece, but you need to be interesting enough to get people there. If this was a tighter written story, it would have been so much better. There's definitely a good movie in here somewhere. It's a shame that so much potential was just wasted. I suggest watching the first 30 minutes for an excellent short film and then turning it off once the time skip happens. 5 out of 10. Number 5. Belfast. Belfast follows the story of a Protestant family in Northern Ireland dealing with the time period of the Troubles. So the Troubles were essentially a religious conflict between the Protestants and the Catholics. The opening sequence was really exciting and got you into the drama right away. It was a little violent, you see a riot going on, and it really just throws you into the action. It was very exciting. My favorite thing about this movie was the use of color. It was really impressive and really unique and used color in a way I've never seen before. I'm not going to describe it. I think you should just watch the movie and find out for yourself. I also really enjoyed how the different family members of this family had different opinions about how they should react to the religious conflict. Some of them want to leave, some of them want to stay. It's really interesting. Unfortunately, though, the least interesting part about this movie is the main character. So the main character of this movie is a child. So a bulk of the movie is the child seeing all of this civil war through a child's eyes. And the unfortunate consequence of that is that the main character has virtually no impact on the story, leaving to them feeling very bland and unimportant. When I look back on my favorite parts of this movie, none of them have to do with the main character. He essentially has no character traits. He's just a basic child. And a few years ago, there was a movie nominated called Jojo Rabbit, and although Jojo Rabbit and this film both have very different tones, they both follow the story of a child who's with a family that's dealing with a war. And Jojo Rabbit, the character felt so fleshed out and dynamic and actively engaging in the plot, as to where this film, he was just there. He had no character arc, and he really just had no input on what was going on, and I think that that was such a missed opportunity. Also, the main villain of this movie is not scary in the slightest. It was just so bizarre to see this scrawny Twinkie dude trying to appear threatening. I could kick this guy's ass. He's not threatening. His performance didn't sell me on the intimidation factor either, so it was a weak performance combined with weak physical traits that made me just not buy this guy as a villain at all. There's a hilarious moment in the movie where he knocks out a trained soldier with one punch, and it's the fakest looking shit ever. It was so funny. Another thing I think that this movie suffered from is a low budget. Because you see the conflict in that first scene. The first scene's really exciting, but then that conflict really isn't in the movie until the end again. So you have this long stretch of the movie where characters are kind of talking about this religious conflict, but we never really see it front and center, and they're just kind of on the outskirts. And it left this religious conflict to feel not as imposing as the film was trying to make you feel like it was. I really found it hard to believe that they were going through this big of a deal when all we were seeing was like the outskirts of it. So I think if this movie had a higher budget, they could have done a better job with that. They could have maybe got a better actor to play the villain, and the movie would have been better. And on top of that, I just didn't really think the movie was all that exciting. You know, it's a bad sign for a movie when I said that my favorite part of the movie was its use of color. I'm gonna give Belfast a 5 out of 10. Number 4. West Side Story. So fun fact about me, I can't stand musicals, and I've seen a bunch of them, and they've all left me felt annoyed and frustrated. Like, someone got the idea to ruin a good movie every 4 minutes. So I watched the first 20 minutes of West Side Story and just got so annoyed that I turned it off. But I know it's really not fair of me to call this a bad movie because I've never liked any musicals. So here's my friend Frankie to give it a fair review.
Sup, classic crew. Frankie here. I'm going to talk about Steven Spielberg's West Side Story because Richard doesn't like movie musicals and I do. So Steven Spielberg's West Side Story is a reimagining of a 1960s film that was originally a 1958 musical that is based off of Romeo and Juliet. Are you following? So we have the characters of Maria and Tony on a love journey while everyone around them wants to kill each other and even kills each other. Everyone in this film slayed their pussies off. Rachel Ziegler as Maria honestly deserved to be nominated for Best Actress and deserved to win. Ariana DeBose does not win Best Supporting Actress for the role of Anita. I am going to riot the Oscars. She slayed. She killed. She went into A Boy Like That with every emotion everyone could ever have and came out on the other side. Also, Michael Fast and the guy that plays Bernardo. Everyone just killed it in this movie. So to get real serious, the cinematography is absolutely stunning and beautiful in this film. The scene where Tony is singing Maria in the beginning is incredible. There's this shot of him in a puddle and you can see the reflection of everything and it is stunning to look at. And then later on in the film when they're performing America and Ariana DeBose is in her yellow and red dress and every color around her matches and it's just incredible. I just think this movie deserved so much more, but someone had to go and do things that I'm not going to talk about. We're just going to get to the final rating now. Okay, so this is one of Steven Spielberg's tour de force films. I think it is absolutely incredible. It is my pick for Best Picture winner this year, which means I'm giving it a 10 out of 10. And hey guys, it's me, Rich Wright, coming back in from the dab room. Anyways, I also give it a 10 out of 10.
Number 3. Koda. Koda follows the story of a teenage girl who's the only member of her family who can hear. She's trying to balance her family life along with her own personal life, growing up and becoming an adult. This movie is a very charming and very cute coming-of-age story. My favorite movie ever made is Lady Bird, so I really just have a soft spot in my heart for movies like this. Koda really reminds me a lot of Lady Bird, but it manages to be different in so many ways that you can watch one without comparing it to the other. The beginning of this movie is just kinda okay. I was mildly invested in what was going on, but also a little bored. But this movie does this amazing thing where every scene just gets better than the last one, and it just keeps getting better and snowballing to the point where halfway through, I was just loving everything about this movie. The characters and the drama just felt so impactful. The jokes were funny, and I was so invested in everything that was going on. This movie's use of sound is very impressive. This is the second year in a row where there's a deaf musician movie nominated for Best Picture. That's pretty funny. The acting is phenomenal, and I really think that Troy Kotsur deserves an Oscar for his performance. He steals the show, he's the dramatic center of the film, and it's probably my favorite acting performance of the year. There was one scene in the movie that did make me cry, like a little girl. And this was the only movie nominated that actually made me cry. I'm not gonna spoil it, I'll just say for the people who've seen it, I'll be vague. It's the scene where she's in the backyard with her dad. Not gonna say anything else. It's my favorite scene in any of the Best Picture nominees. Every dramatic beat of that scene was perfect. I really loved everything about the second half of this film. It's just a shame that the first half wasn't as good. I still would highly recommend it though. And I'm gonna give Koda a 7 out of 10. Number 2. Dune. Denis Villeneuve is one of my favorite directors of all time. He has just made fantastic movie after fantastic movie. Arrival being easily my favorite. I love that movie. Here, Denis Villeneuve managed to make a very long and very slow-paced sci-fi film that manages to feel dramatic and engaging the entire time. The cinematography and visuals are easily the best of the year. This is probably the best looking Villeneuve film and arguably the single best looking film ever made. I'm serious, I'm not exaggerating. Watch this movie in a theater and you will see what I'm talking about. This movie feels like Villeneuve took the top 10% best parts of every Star Wars movie and put it in one movie and just put his own personal flair on it. That way it's like separate and different enough from those movies that it can be its own thing. The prequels are insanely boring and made me think that slow-paced space politics would never be interesting, but Dune managed to do it very, very well. I was shocked at how engrossed I was in kinda boring space politics. The dangers in this film felt so real and intense. Every person will potentially betray their allies, kind of like Game of Thrones, but the world is also insanely dangerous too. My favorite moments of the movie were actually when the characters were trying to avoid a 400-foot long death worm. It's super weird and super out there, and I just love shit like this. Somehow, I took the 400-foot long death worm seriously. It was very, very scary, I swear. Dune was an absolutely fantastic movie. My only main criticism is that the main character is kinda lame, but whatever. 8 out of 10, I love it. And my favorite movie nominated for Best Picture this year is Nightmare Alley, directed by Guillermo del Toro. Nightmare Alley was directed by Guillermo del Toro, who previously won Best Picture for the fish fucking movie. Now, I really disliked The Shape of Water. It was very mixed for me, so I really wasn't excited for this movie. But oh my god, I was so pleasantly surprised. Basically, it's about Bradley Cooper, who after trying to leave his troubled past, he joins the circus. And that's all I'm gonna say, because this movie goes in so many crazy and unexpected directions, and I really just don't want to spoil it. Go in blind, it's the best way to do it. This movie is campy as hell, and I loved every second of it. But the thing about the camp is that it was never so over the top that it took away from the drama. So one moment you'll be having a blast from the pure cheese of this film, and then the next you'll be borderline in tears, and I think balancing these two tones is very impressive. The visuals to this film were also just drop dead gorgeous. The set design of the circus was gross in all the right ways. The swooping camera movements that followed the characters were really, really impressive and seemed like they must have taken a lot of coordination between everyone involved. Also, once again, Guillermo del Toro uses music in the most perfect way. I've seen a bunch of the best Bradley Cooper movies, and I've never really thought that he was that great of a performer, but oh my god, he's just amazing in this movie. If you ask me, he fits the character perfectly. I loved this main character. He was just so shrouded in mystery, and for a while you really couldn't tell what his intentions are, but then when you finally find out what he becomes, it's just incredible to watch. There are just so many amazing actors in this movie that played small characters. Toni Collette and Willem Dafoe are just amazing in everything I've seen them in. The only complaint I have with the movie is minor. There's this moment in the middle of the film where it kind of feels like the movie doesn't really know what it wants to be. It's a little awkward, but it only lasts a few minutes, so I can't really complain too much about it. Anyway, I loved this movie. I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10. So if it isn't abundantly clear by now, I found myself to be insanely disappointed by the selection of films this year. I found most of them to be an absolute chore to get through. Most of these movies felt too long, too boring, and way too cheesy. I really only liked 3 of them, which is the exact opposite of last year. Last year's Oscar lineup was filled to the brim with great movies like The Father, Sound of Metal, Minari, Nomadland, and Judas and the Black Messiah. But honestly, 2021 as a whole just felt like a very disappointing year for films in general. So many films got pushed back from 2020 to 2021 because of the worldwide whoopsie-daisy, so I kind of was expecting 2021 to just have non-stop amazing movies coming out, and I was very, very wrong. I only ended up giving one movie this year an 8 or above. And that movie was Inside by Bo Burnham. Despite being my favorite movie of the year, it didn't get nominated for a single Oscar. This is a very personal and experimental film that really managed to grasp the struggles everyone had to deal with during the lockdowns of 2020. The film does a fantastic job of showing how the state of the world that year had an impact on Beau's mental state, and I absolutely loved it, and I wished it was nominated for Best Picture, Editing, Cinematography, Director, Sound Editing, Sound Mixing, and Best Original Song for All Eyes on Me. I'm really disappointed that the Academy seemingly ignored this movie. That now makes 4 years in a row where my favorite film of the year wasn't nominated for anything. Whatever. I guess at this point, the way you know you were the best movie of the year is by not being nominated for Best Picture. Cool. My second favorite movie of the year was Lamb, a Swedish A24 film about two farmers who discover that one of their lamb had a baby who was half lamb, half human. This is an insane, bizarre, and crazy film, and I absolutely loved it. Out of any film this year, Lamb was the one that definitely had me thinking about it the most out of anything. The more and more I thought about this movie, the more and more things I found to appreciate about it. I prefer movies that get better the more you think about it than movies that just get worse or don't inspire you to think about it at all. My friends and I just sat in the parking lot for 30 minutes talking about this movie when we left the theater, and it was awesome. This movie definitely should have been nominated for Best Picture, Director, Score, Cinematography, and especially effects and costume design. Whatever, the Academy doesn't respect horror films. This is nothing new, but it is still very, very annoying. Let me know what you guys thought about the nominees this year. Did you like them? Did you hate them? Let me know in the comments. I would love to hear it. Also, thank you guys for helping me hit 3,000 subscribers. That means so much to me. It's really, really exciting that I hit that milestone, especially the same week as my birthday. So thank you guys so much for subscribing, for watching, for commenting. It means a lot to me. Thank you. Goodbye.